saludarles, mi nombre es Kevin Medina y voy a estar hablando hoy sobre PCI y tecnologías emergentes. Voy a presentar en inglés, pero cualquier pregunta la pueden hacer en español, sin ningún problema. So when we think about PCI, we think about compliance, and it can be dumb if you just use it as a checklist, but if you use the PCI framework as a baseline to improve the cybersecurity posture of your organization, it can really pay off. If we go back to the basics, for instance, you need to have an inventory. If you don't have an inventory of your payment system, payment application in your organization, then how are you going to secure them? I have been to organizations that they don't even know how many terminals they have. They can have thousands and they don't know where they are. They don't know what version of operating system they are running. So this is really important that we see PCI as a foundation to have a better security in your organization. I've been with Trustwave beginning this year. Before that, I was working for University of Miami, and before that, working for the Navy. I began as a software developer, and then moved back to do security, and now doing security application for Trustwave. Right now, I work with payment applications. So you have PCI, and then you have PA. So any payment application that collect credit card data has to be validated if that payment application is collecting information in behalf of clients. If you develop your own payment application, then you don't have necessarily to do the validation. So many people know Trustwave as the leaders in PCI, and that's how we began in the past. Nowadays we have most of the market for PCI, but we have grown to be a managed security service provider. So we have the threat management area, and there is your typical security operations center, where we collect data from different organizations, and then we do correlation, and we can provide real-time intelligence. We have operations centers around the world. We have in the States, in Canada, in Japan. So pretty much we have a global footprint in terms of security operations center. We also have the vulnerability management, where you have your typical scanning, but also we have penetration testing for application, for network, and different kind of systems. And then within compliance, we have the PCI, but we also have the payment application, point-to-point encryption, and that's where I live in the payment application, point-to-point encryption system for Trustwave. So like I mentioned, a payment application that do authorizations, that is when you go to buy at a store and you swipe your credit card, that has to be authorized by the issuer of your credit card, the bank that provides you with a credit card. So if that application do authorization or do settlements, then that application has to be validated if that application is going to be sold to third-party providers. Even though you may not be required to do a payment application validation because you are not selling the payment application, still it is recommended by the PCI Council that you follow the framework, because there is good security practice like threat modeling, and we also have testing. We provide good feedback to the client after we do the penetration testing. We do the report, and it really helps improve the processes. And the most important, you don't want your application to be out and then be part of the data breach containing credit card transaction. And we have seen many data breaches in the news recently, so something to keep in mind. Basically, we start with the initialization, we do the scoping of the project, and then in the data gathering, we review the architecture of the payment application. We check the threat modeling process of the organization along with other documentation. If that is clear and we agree that it looks fine, then we move to the testing. In the testing, one of the things we do is we run many transactions. We take credit cards that are for testing, and we swipe them, we enter them manually, and we see how the application behaves. One of the clients I have in Orlando, for instance, I swipe the credit card transaction, I disconnect the terminal, and then the application crashes and dump the entire credit card numbers, the PAN, into the logs. So that's a bad security practice that cannot happen. And it's happening because the developers forgot to take that scenario into consideration. They were thinking it's the perfect world where you swipe, or you're always going to have connectivity back to the servers, but that isn't always the case. Another situation we have with a client was the memory. They were not cleaning the memory after the authorization. Once you are done with the data, you have to do a cleaning, and that was another issue we found in that scenario. After we are done with the transactions or the testing, we do a forensic image of the hard drive, and we take that back to the office, and then we use a forensic tool to find credit card data. If we find credit card data after transactions has been authorized, that's a finding, and that requires to do a new testing. And we work with the client to see what issues could have caused that and how to improve that so that doesn't happen again when we do the new testing. Then, hopefully everything is fine, and we do reporting that goes to a QA, then that goes to the PCI counter. And if your payment application is approved, is validated, then it's going to be listed online, and you'll be able to send that application as a validated payment application. It's going to be online. Any potential customer can go online and look for the validations here or there. So, like I say, what can go wrong if you don't clean your memory, you don't handle the data in memory properly? Then when we do the forensics memory on the hard drive, you can see the credit card number. In this case, it's a Visa number. And there's many different ways you can work on this. Let's say you are using Java. In Java, you can use multiple data types, and then after you are done with the data, right after, you have to put zero in the objects, and you clean up the memory. You cannot wait for the garbage collector because you don't know when that garbage collector is going to be called, and also if something happens and the operating system decides to write that data in the hard drive, then we're going to find it later in the forensic. We know many operating systems rely on the hard drive as a swap space for memory. So if the memory gets to be full, then it's going to go to hard drive. Also, with the issue we have with memory, we have seen many malwares that they scrap the memory every so often. If they find something that is like a credit card number, they copy that and they send that out to a command and control location, and just imagine you have 1,000 transactions, all those numbers is going to be part of the data breach. So it's really important to consider how you're going to handle data that is sensitive in memory. So in the past, we have been focusing on security defense infrastructure. We put an IPS, we put antivirus, we do this, that, but that has been proven to be really hard to do because there are many pieces. And it's expensive, and it's a difficult process. You have an organization that they have thousands of servers, hundreds of workstations. It's going to be really hard to have good security if you follow that. So the idea is to focus more on the data rather than focusing on the infrastructure. If you focus on the data, then it's easier to protect. So if we see PCI, there is a lot of stuff that we can do, especially for payment applications. There is the standard, it has over 200 pages. But it's important that you, as a client, if you have to be compliant with PCI, read and understand the documentation. What we find is that many clients, they come to us and they don't know what they have to be compliant with, because yeah, we have a responsibility as consultant to provide advice, but you understand the organization better, so it's important that you read the documentation also, and we work as a team to close the gap. So that's something that I always find. I encourage my client to go back and read the standard documentation. So when we talk about credit card data, what we need to protect. So we have two major elements. We have the cardholder data, that's basically your credit card number, or if we're going to use a proper terminology, that would be the PAN. And you are allowed to store that with protection. It has to be encrypted, it has to be a strong encryption, and there is a definition of what a strong encryption means according to the PCI Council. The other thing is that you have to have a time limit for how long you're going to keep that data. I remember one client I visited one time, they have 10 years of credit card data unlocked. Pretty much anyone could walk in and steal the data. And I asked her, why do you have this? And she said, I don't know, I just have it. So you need to think about that. You can have it, but have to have a business case. You're going to have it for a year, you're going to have it for 1 month. So it's important that you define that. The second point within the cardholder data elements is the sensitive authentication data. That data is used to authenticate the card. And there you have the full magnetic stripe data, track 1, track 2, and the CVVs. You don't have to keep that after the authorization. Actually, you are not allowed to keep that authorization. You don't need that information. If you, for any reason, want to validate a client, what you do, you ask for the CVV every so often. Let's say you go to Amazon.com. They don't always ask for the CVV, but from time to time, they ask for that to verify that you have the card with you and you are actually the owner. Or let's say they detect that you are connecting now from China and you are the client in the States. So now they see, okay, let's ask for validation because the EU location is different, right? So that's really important, and that's a misunderstanding about keeping sensitive authentication data. So as we know, technology moves really fast, and the challenge with that is that compliance moves more slowly. Compliance is more careful on what they allow because there's many unknowns with new technology. It's exciting to have the latest and greatest, but also we have to test it. We have to vet the technology. And actually, it's exciting. It's an industry that pretty much from 2013 to 2014 duplicated in investment. So that's an exciting field to be in. So like I mentioned, we need to be thinking more about how to protect the data and forget about the devices where the information lives. One of those cases is the point-to-point encryption, where the data from the point of swipe, from the point of interaction with the swiping credit card, that data is going to be encrypted from point A to point B. So if anyone, for any reason, they intercept the data, they won't be able to read it. And so if they can read it, they won't be able to steal the data. In there, we have 3 main technologies, which is point-to-point encryption for protecting credit card in motion. Then we have the EMB, which is pretty much to authenticate the data in the card, to authenticate that the credit card is not one that has been stolen, one that has been cloned. And then the tokenization, which is used to protect data that is leaving at rest in the storage. So for point-to-point encryption, under PCI, only P2P is going to allow you to reduce the scope and hopefully get away from the PCI compliant framework. So you're going to focus more on point-to-point encryption, which is smaller, easier to comply with. And there is many areas that we test in the point-to-point encryption, like application security. We make sure that the terminal is communicated in a safe way to the APIs back to the payment application. Also, the terminal that you are using to do the swipe has to have the secure reading and exchange of data technology. That means that from the point of swipe, that data is encrypted and can be read. So that's really important. If we look here, this is a real business case, a big healthcare institution with thousands of clients, patients, and they had a electronic health record system, Epic, and they wanted to make that system compliant. The challenge was that they were using the same computers to take credit card payments, also to go to the internet and to do patient verification. You have a patient, they come and they want to know if the insurance is valid or they are asking for an address. So what they do in that scenario, because if we go by PCI, we have to block the internet and only allow connections that are secure or are known. And they have over 200 points where you could pay around the metropolitan area, and every location has different configuration spaces, different department. Dermatology is different from cardiology, so a lot of issues to consider. So one of the things we told them, so why you don't have a single computer? And you have one for credit card transaction and Epic, and then you have one for the internet. And they say, no, well, we don't have the space. That's going to be two machines that we have to maintain, we have to buy new computers. So that wasn't no. And then also the budget. Who's going to pay for those new computers and the maintenance? And also every department is different because in dermatology, for instance, they take pictures, but cardiology, they don't take pictures. So if you lock down the computers not to allow any USB device to be connected, but dermatology need to take pictures because they put a USB, so that's going to be a challenge. And I think the most important was the lack of executive support. We talked to people that were really in the C-suite. Many of them didn't care too much about PCI. They saw that more as a technical problem. So one of the solutions we proposed to them was to use the cloud. So basically you have your computer, your EHR computer over there on the left, where you're gonna take credit card transaction, or you're gonna do you're gonna work with patient information, and that computer is gonna be locked down. You are only allowed to take credit card payments or do stuff that is related to patient data under HIPAA. And then if you need to go to the internet, you're gonna go to the cloud. You're gonna access that through a VPN, and that is a non-persistent image. So that means that you go to do whatever you need to do on the internet. Maybe you go to Google to provide a direction to the client, to the patient. And then after you're done, you close the session, and then everything is secure because that's happening in the cloud, and then the credit card happen on the left. So that's a solution that we propose to them. And we tested that. We chose one of the main cloud service provider, and we tested and it worked. The other solution was to use a point-to-point encryption solution that has been already approved under PCI and implementing that with Epic. The problem is that many of these electronic health record systems, they have been customized. And the point-to-point encryption solution was tested for one specific scenario, not for many customization. So that means that they have to go through some testing and hopefully see if they're going to be able to use that solution. The other challenge with this solution is that the provider of point-to-point encryption is going to charge you a transaction fee for every transaction. They're going to take a percentage every time they swipe a credit card. So that's going to be costs now that you're going to have that you didn't have before. But at the same time, if you are point-to-point, you are using point-to-point encryption, it's going to be easier for you to be compliant. It's just a smaller document, it's easy to fill, and life is going to be better for you. The other challenge is that every one of those devices there, the terminals, the POS terminal, they cost about $300. So you have to buy 300 of them or 1,000 of them, and you already have new devices. That's going to be cost. So even though it's an exciting technology, not many companies are moving to it because they are planning in the future to do it. But right now is because let's say you are PCI compliant already, you have your processes. What is your motivation right now to move to do point-to-point encryption if everything is working? So it's going to take some time, like any other technology. as you see clients moving toward point-to-point encryption, you'll see more of those terminal devices being deployed around. So I think the thing to keep in mind here is that you need to use pre-transaction approved devices that provide you with secure real-time exchange of data, and they are listed on the PCI Council website. So if you're gonna buy new devices, make sure that you buy the right thing. And they have to be, like I say, they have to be listed. Or if a vendor tells you otherwise, it's not a good solution. It's not gonna work. So a technology that has been for a long time in the field is magnetic stripe. Virtually, it has suffered no change from the 1960s. It's easy. You pretty much swipe your credit card into the terminal. That is sent to the acquirer. Then that goes to the issuer, and then the issuer say, "Oh yeah, this person has a valid account. I'm going to approve the transaction, or I'm going to decline the transaction, and you'll have money there." But there is not pretty much any validation of the card. That's why we have now EMV. It was developed back in the 1970s for banks to protect credit card data that they were keeping in the credit card. But now they're using that to validate the card. So the workflow in the EMV technology is a little bit different. Here you swipe the credit card on the terminal, and then there is a code that is combined with a code from the terminal, the session key that is unique. That is a cryptogram that is sent out to the issuer. The issuer then generates their own cryptogram because they own the card and they have a secure model to do the generation of the cryptogram. They compare them. If they are the same, then it's a valid card. If there is no a match, then the card is probably stolen. And that's how they do a validation. So that's why we're seeing that this technology is being deployed more and more in the industry, because allow bank and issuer to reduce the possibility of having stolen credit cards being used or being cloned. So that was 2015. That already is out in the market. If you are a merchant and you don't implement EMV, any transaction that is fraudulent, you're going to pay for that. Banks are not going to take the frauds anymore. And for gasoline retailers, where you pay at the pump, you have until 2017 to do implementation. In the case of Visa, they have a program, it's called TIP, and if you have more of 75% of your transaction going to point-to-point encryption, they may waive the PCI compliant part, the report, and so that's helpful because it's less paperwork that you have to do. Something to consider if you are using point-to-point encryption. In the case of tokenization, basically what we're doing is taking the sensitive number of the credit card and we are exchanging that for a token, and then you only keep the token in your network. So given that you don't have the token, and given that you don't have the credit card number in your environment anymore, if someone were to steal that token, they're not going to be able to use that for credit card transaction to take place. So the important thing here to keep in mind is that if you're using tokenization and you want to reduce the scope for PCI, you need to use an outsourced tokenization service provider. So they are going to be responsible for keeping that credit card data safe. And if something happens, you're not going to be, from a point of view of liability, it's going to be less on you or more on them because they are keeping that data for you. I have seen clients that they say, "Oh, I have tokenization," but they also have the data on premise, so there is not too much value for you because you have the data anyway. So if you get hacked, you get compromised, they're going to steal the data. So, like I say, if you do point-to-point encryption, but you have the ability to decryption of the data, then you are still in scope for PCI. It's only when the key the private key to decrypt the data is on the service provider, that is the scenario where you don't have any more responsibility, and where you can be point-to-point, where you can use a point-to-point encryption and be one that is accepted by the PCI Council. And the same with the token. You have the token, but you also have the ability to do tokenization, then you're going to be still in scope for that section in the PCI framework. In the case of mobile payment application, they work a little bit different than your general payment application living on the server. Basically, you have three categories. You have category 1, which they are running on a PTS terminal, the typical terminal that has been approved by PCI. You have your category 2, which is, it could be an Android phone that only do credit card transaction. It's not your typical consumer mobile phone where the customer also do other stuff. And category 3, which right now is not under PA, it doesn't have to be validated, but it's recommended. That is your consumer application where maybe you're a Square, where you use that to go to Facebook, where you also take credit card transaction. And the reason that it's recommended that you do the validation is because when we do the penetration testing, we provide the client with information that they can use to enhance the security of the payment application. And also, if in the future PCI were to change that and your payment application on the category 3 now has to be PA, you're going to be ahead because your application is already secure, is already safe. It's really hard to, after you have developed an application and you are already in the implementation phase, to do big changes. So it's better if you consider security in the application in the early phases, on the design, you do your threat modeling, you do your security requirements as part of your design. It's going to be way cheaper than if you wait after. And they have good guidance for developers. It's free, it's good documentation. You're working with payment application to take a look at the documentation provided by the PCI Council. So, like I mentioned, one of the key takeaways is to see security as part of your process. Don't do threat modeling because you have to, or after you design your application, it's already running. It's not going to make any sense, it's not going to work. You have to do it early, you have to think about security from the day one. From the day you think about developing a new application, you have to consider security. Understand what you are responsible for and what your vendor are responsible. And very important, read the documentation, read the standards applied to you before you go out and seek out for help. And also important that you consider to talk with organizations that are qualified, like QSA, if for PCI, or PA QSA, if you're talking about payment applications. I appreciate, thank you for the opportunity, and any question? English, Español.
You already test the mobile version of on the Wi-Fi. I don't know si, por ejemplo, si hay un tipo de POS que son inalámbricos.
Sí.
Han hecho pruebas de esa modalidad para que tiene más libre de ataque.
Sí, tenemos
capturado paquetes.
Sí. Una de las pruebas que hacemos es que utilizamos Wireshark, entonces para ver cómo los datos son transferidos de punto a punto, y hay unos requerimientos que tienen que ser un tipo de encripción fuerte, y a veces hemos visto clientes donde la data está en plain text, entonces eso no es permitido. Algunos clientes móviles, por ejemplo, la categoría que mencioné, donde no es requerido probar bajo PA, pero algunos clientes deciden porque es una buena práctica y descubren muchas vulnerabilidades. Entonces, en ese caso, sí hemos trabajado con aplicaciones móviles y wireless.
Cuando aquí en Puerto Rico se hace la transacción, ¿salen por área? ¿Salen separadas? Porque yo fui, tengo varios casos, yo fui, a mí me tumbaron la tarjeta.
Sí.
Y a unos también se le han hecho en San Juan, le han clonado la tarjeta, tipo, whatever. ¿Cómo salen las transacciones en salen por área que ellos no pueden regresar tan rápido, algo así.
Bueno, esa es una parte más de los brands, Visa, Mastercard, pero ellos tienen inteligencia y si ellos ven patrones.
Sí, yo sé que lo han detenido, me hicieron 7 donativos de $1 en diferentes sitios antes de hacer una compra. Y terminaron donándole $1 a una asociación de gays maltratados de Toronto. Pues yo investigué todas las cosas que ellos me dieron una vida. Donaron un montón de cosas. Trataron de comprar un reloj y todo. Yo me reí porque él siguió buscando. Si uno no tenía, eran 8 pesos en la cuenta. Pero la parte técnica, o sea, eso sale en grupo, las ATM son seguras, no son seguras, o cómo funciona esto, porque es que es mejor salir con 20 pesos en la cartera y dejar la TH en la casa.
Bueno, como todo, no hay nada seguro. Se hacen pruebas y se depura el proceso y se mejora. Y esto es un continuo mejoramiento.
¿Y qué tan cerca están estos equipos que te agarran la data? ¿Qué tan cerca pueden estar a tu cartera? ¿Me entiendes? Para poder cogerte el número o algo así.
Sí. Bueno, en el caso de las tarjetas EMV, esa es una de las razones por las cuales tenemos ese tipo de tarjetas. Entonces no es posible ya poder leer con un lector inalámbrico o simplemente copiarte la tarjeta tan fácilmente como antes.
O sea que ya están haciendo un proceso de cambiarle las tarjetas a las personas.
Sí, las que tienen EMV, que tienen chip. Y bueno, por la mayor parte del caso, el cliente nunca es responsable.
Sí, pero tú estás en un bar y estás en un sitio y te pasan y no actualizas la tarjeta, pues te la cobramos.
Claro, molesta. Una de las cosas, por ejemplo, hay personas que yo conozco que tienen 2 tarjetas. Tienen una de $500, entonces esa la utilizan para ir a un bar, un restaurante, y otra para transacciones más recurrentes. Entonces así puedes quizás minimizar el impacto a tu estilo de vida y que te afecte.
No sé si mencionaste esto, pero verdad que las tarjetas que son EMV, cada transacción es única y si alguien viene y se me pega o se le pega el POS, clonea ese transaction ID, no puede utilizarse porque esa transacción es única.
Sí, en el criptograma que se genera entre la tarjeta y el terminal es una sesión única, entonces no sirve más que para esa transacción. Entonces, cuando eso llega al banco, al issuer, ellos hacen su propio criptograma y lo comparan y pueden validar si es una tarjeta auténtica. Lo que no podemos validar en Estados Unidos es la identidad del usuario, porque no hay PIN, es una firma. Entonces, si yo tengo una tarjeta que es EMV, pero yo no soy el tarjetaviente, yo no soy el dueño, no van a poder validarlo. Y es la forma en que decidieron implementarlo en Estados Unidos. El resto del mundo se utiliza el PIN, que es más seguro.
La forma de los mobile payments, ¿es más segura que las tarjetas o todavía seguimos hablando igual de crítico?
Mobile payment como los wallets.
Como el de Android o Apple Pay.
Samsung Pay.
Esas.
Sí, eso es más seguro porque se utiliza tokenización. Entonces solamente una vez se transfiere el número de tarjeta de crédito, transfiere y después de eso es un token. Entonces el token solamente funciona para Apple. Si una persona roba el token y lo intenta utilizar en Amazon, no le va a servir. Entonces esa es la idea de utilizar tokenización, porque se minimiza las veces en que el número se mueve de punto a punto y también si alguna persona tiene acceso a esa base de datos de los tokens, no le va a servir de nada.
La inscripción en tarjetas de crédito per se y las tarjetas que son de débito, ¿es diferente o todo coge igual?
Es la misma tecnología. Sí.
Pero estamos hablando de inscripción 256 bits.
Sí, el PCI, el Point to Point Encryption, tiene una guía, entonces te dice cuáles son las llaves fuertes, porque eso lo estás monitoreando y solo alguien con NIST, que tiene un guidance, entonces ellos te dicen el AES 256 se compara a esta llave en tal sistema de inscripción, de cifrado, entonces siempre se está verificando.
¿Sabes de algún conocimiento de algún banco aquí en Puerto Rico que haga ese sistema? Que lo tenga. ¿Cómo yo puedo ir y decirle al banco, mira, yo tengo mi tarjeta que tenga este tipo de protección?
Es 15, ¿no?
Hasta Sams la tiene.
Si está bajo NIST.
Sams la
Si
tiene.
está trabajando bajo.
Sí, sí. Bueno, muchos bancos están en el proceso, a veces puedes llamar al banco y pedirle que pues, que te orienten sobre el proceso, te adelanten. A veces si tú llamas, ellos pueden enviarte la tarjeta más rápido, porque como son miles de tarjetas, ellos tienen un proceso de poco a poco migrar a los clientes. También ellos pueden migrar a los clientes los más riesgosos y entonces, pues, cada banco tiene su plan.
Igual que los merchants, tienen que tener los POS.
Sí, pues en el caso de los merchants, como mencioné, si ellos no están en EMV y hay un fraude, ellos van a pagar el costo. Entonces, no es obligatorio desde el punto de vista del PCI, pero es bien sugerido porque entonces es un costo que vas a asumir.
Ok, había el último que me enteré, era que no era ni la tarjeta ni el iOS, entraron en la programación y desde ahí es que estaban robando los datos. ¿Hay algo, desarrollaron algo contra eso?
¿Me puedes explicar un poco el...?
Ok, no era clonación de tarjeta y no era robo en el POS, era en la misma programación, en el chip de adentro, de ahí era que se estaban robando los datos. O sea, no era... Sí, no sé si te enteraste de eso, si sabes si hubo alguna evolución contra eso.
Hay unas pruebas que se hicieron a nivel de universidad y se demostró técnicamente que se puede, pero todavía no ha sido algo. Por ejemplo, estaba hablando de una persona de Mastercard y ellos no han tenido ningún caso en Latinoamérica donde haya sido exitoso alguien clonado la tarjeta. Entonces, a nivel quizá teórico universitario, han hecho algo, pero no ha sido todavía práctico.
Okay.
Pues, bueno, muchas gracias.
En el caso que una compañía que guarde información de tarjeta de crédito, pero que no sea el issue, sino que, que no sea este proceso, usa un third party para hacer el procesamiento, pero sea quien guarda la tarjeta. Automáticamente esa compañía tiene que ser Visa Corporate, porque si no, no puede guardar la tarjeta de crédito.
Sí. Si tú transfieres, procesas o almacenas, entonces caes en los PCI y te aplica la parte de almacenamiento.
La cuestión del storage, sin la transmisión y sin la verificación.
Sí, sí, sí. Gracias.